boy.
Welcome to Sons of Ditches with your host, Ronald Worley.
Hey guys, Ron Worley, Sons of Ditches. One more week, very special week. We have a very special guest who wrote her first book called Loving Life After Loss. And that one amazingly became number one. And now she's on to her second book. And that one's called Happy Healing. Marie, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Ron. It's a pleasure to be here.
You know, I was just telling you off air. So I wrote a book and it was very difficult for me. You're probably a great writer, so that doesn't matter to you, but to get a number one slot is amazing. And I'm very proud of you to be able to do that. I've actually met a number one seller.
Woohoo! I have to say, Ron, it was such a surprise for me too. When I wrote the book, it was literally meant to be a love legacy for my husband. And I realized in the way that I dealt with our adversity, it was very different to what most people do. So I had this moment where I knew I had to share that with the outside world. I wanted to leave some hope around. You know, I really just wanted to spread some hope that there are different ways of coping with it. When it hit the Amazon number one bestseller and it ranked in the top 100 of Australia, that was it just really blew me away. I did not expect that whatsoever. So yeah, I was just as surprised as you are.
Yeah, well, and it's always we always worry about the what ifs, and it's usually negative. But what if you're successful? And you answered that question. So, very, very good job. And so, the book was probably so wonderful, popular because it's your real life story. Our audience doesn't know, so I'm going to walk them through a little bit.
Sure.
So you lost your father when you were 20 to brain cancer or to cancer.
To cancer, yes. He had lymphoma, yes.
And then your husband widowed you with two extra children. He died of...
he had a brain aneurysm.
Yes.
Yeah, at the age of 45.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
And how many years ago was that?
3.5, almost. Yeah, it'll be 4 years in June.
Oh my gosh, really? It's still very, very recent.
It feels to me like forever ago, to be honest, because so much happened since. It's incredible. So yeah, it feels like a very long journey that we've walked since.
Yeah. Well, and you have two children. They were 10 and 8 when you died. So obviously they're 4 years older each. And how have they been coping?
Actually, surprisingly well. I'm really, really impressed with the way they're going. The first 1 to 2 years were probably the hardest for my little one. He was only 8 when Rob passed. So he took it the hardest out of all of us, I believe, because he is an extreme empath. So, and he was very, very close to Rob. And so was my older son, but my older son is very pragmatic and he's, like sort of deal with things and also like becoming a teenager, there's this whole I can do everything that really helped. It sounds a bit funny, but it really helped in terms of coping with that. And also kids are a lot more resilient than we give them credit for. They're incredible, really incredible. I'm absolutely blown away by the way they dealt with it. They're definitely in maturity, way ahead of their years. It's incredible just to watch them. I'm just in awe. I'm a proud mama bear.
Yes, you are, and that's good. That's really good. So did they have to grow up a little bit? I mean, that's loss tends
for sure.
Yeah. So give us your take. Your book, obviously, you've got a unique perspective on loss. So give us what was the low of the low for you?
So to step back before I answer this question, it was the most amazing part of that was that I worked in mindset coaching when Rob passed. So I've been dealing with shifts of perspective, working on your mindset for 7.5 years before Rob died. And I now know that I couldn't have had a better preparation for what was to come. Looking back now, it's almost ironic how this all happened, how I went from the advertising world and got out of it because we had kids and then started in self-development. So having that as a tool belt around me was incredible. And also Rob was the one who actually taught me about the concept of two choices before I stepped into self-development. And he always said, you know, you have the choice in your life every single day. Do you focus on the negative or on the happy, on the positive? And also we had a couple of talks, as it happens between parents, you know, what if something was to happen to me one day? And of course, that was all theory. We never thought that it would really happen. But both of us always said, if something was to happen to me, I want you to take life, to have the boys and create the happiest life possible. And we knew we really meant that for each other, despite thinking it was theory. We knew we meant that because that's what love is. If you love someone, you want them to be happy and not fall apart. It's that simple. It's not always easy to live that, but it's that simple. So when that happened, when I received the phone call that Rob had deceased in a hotel room in Perth, he was on a business trip, 5 hours flights away from us. So it was completely unexpected. And when that happened, I think the lowest of the low was having to tell my children. That was definitely the lowest point in my entire life, having to walk downstairs. I'm saying downstairs because we live in a split level and I was upstairs in our bedroom, and to walk downstairs to the living room where they waited for me to drive them to Hapkido. They were ready for their martial arts training. And to have to break those news, that was, yeah, I have no words. I had 3 seconds to prepare myself for that. There was no sugarcoating this message. I literally had to say it straight out that their dad had passed, and there was crying, and then there was screaming, and I was not prepared for screaming. I was not prepared for any of that, to be honest, but I was just, the screaming really pierced through my heart. I did not expect that. And you could see the sheer fear and panic and what's going to happen now. And, it was really, that was probably the lowest point. And that was also the moment where I just knew I had to do whatever it takes to create happiness for them, to protect them. Yeah.
Man, so you had to tell them, you barely had enough time to hear it yourself, and then you had to tell your children.
Yeah, exactly.
Heart-wrenching.
I had a friend with me because I called her and said something's wrong with Rob. I can't get a hold of him. I've been trying to contact him all day. I've tried to, contact his work, and she said, I'll come over. And she was with me when the phone call came, and she was trying to get through to hospitals because we thought, what can we do? Ring hospitals if an accident happened, whatever. We were at that stage already, really, really worried. And then that phone call came that Rob had passed, and she actually offered to me, she said, do you want me to take the boys so you can do whatever you need to do right now? And I said, there's no way. They've just lost their dad. I can't just leave them with somebody else. I need to be there for them. And that decision was so profound. It was so much more than just that moment. It was literally for our entire life. I need to do this right now. I need to be there for them. And we formed such a strong bond. We already were very close-knit beforehand, but after that, like, this triangle is unbreakable. It's really,
I bet.
Yeah. I have no words.
Well, and it's hard to put words to that. So really, honestly, you had to step up as a parent and put your own feelings aside and be strong at all costs and create happiness at all costs. And it's a beautiful, beautiful thing, and good for you in the moment. That is
thank you.
Heart-wrenching. So how long before you started writing your book after he passed?
Not long. It was about 4 months.
Really?
Yeah, 4.5 months into it, I think. And I had a moment, speaking about strength, when you said strength, I had a moment about a week after Rob's funeral, because there was this big release, everything was over that had to be arranged. As you can imagine, it was so much we had to fly to the other side of the country to identify his body. We had to arrange funeral paperwork, all of that. And if I say we, I actually mean I had to, because, there was just me. And but it was just, the funeral was over. And then we also, in the same week of the funeral, we had my little one's first Holy Communion. So, on Wednesday, I had the funeral, and then on Sunday, I walked my little one down the aisle for his first Holy Communion. So it was just incredible. There was just so many different emotions, so many different layers. And after that, I had a nervous breakdown. I remember being in the kitchen and the boys started bickering over brushing their teeth. And, you know, as boys do, there was nothing major, but I got to a point where I was like, guys, can you just please keep it down? Come on. And I could feel I had nothing left. I was so drained, and every mom will be able to relate to that, in particular in a situation like that. And I remember at some stage, because they just didn't stop, I yelled out and went like, I just need peace and quiet. You know, it's just like that.
Yeah.
And the moment I said that, it was like a valve had opened.
Oh.
I could not stop saying that sentence anymore, over and over. And I just yelled it. And then I yelled it louder and louder. And I started screaming it. And then I screamed on top of my lungs. And then I just screamed. There was no more words. It was just screaming after this whole, I just need peace and quiet. I was whacking the kitchen cupboards. I still have the marks on the cupboards to show it. Not that I need to prove anything, but I felt I needed to keep them as a memory of what happened and how far I've come. And every time I look at them, and I have this memory of what happened, but in a good way now. I really feel how far I've come and how much I've stepped up since. But that falling apart moment was really just such a huge release of all the built up emotion. And I remember sitting down with them afterwards and having a chat to them about what had happened and how fragile I felt. I felt I should be protecting them, and now I exposed them to such vehemence of emotions, you know, where I'm like, I really wanted to protect them from that. And I remember sitting there on my bed. My little one was hiding under the Juno. My older one was sitting there just literally blank, you know, and I explained to them what had happened and how I felt, and that it was one of the most out of body experiences for me at that stage, that I really felt like I was watching myself and I couldn't stop it. I couldn't protect myself from that happening. And a part of me also felt like it felt really good to let go finally, you know, to just scream it out. It was so primal. So, and then that was also the moment when I realized I need help with that. I can't do everything on my own. I really need help with that. And I called a positive psychologist. She was already, I've never met her in person, but she was already in my network, because working as a coach, every now and then I would come across things that were way beyond coaching, where I referred people on to get help with a psychologist as well. And she was in that network, and I just knew of her, and I knew if anything, it would have to be her. And she gave me one of her emergency slots. We sat there, and that's where I realized that I had to share my story. So working with Emily was amazing, really, like fast forward. Every session was such a fast forward moment for me through healing. And I said to her, it really, it's quite full on how people have these expectations of how I'm supposed to grieve, how I'm supposed to fall apart, how I'm supposed to be completely unhappy. And this is just not my path. I said, that's not what I promised, Rob. We promise each other we'd be happy and we create happiness for the boys. And that's what I want to do. But people look at me as like, either I've lost my marbles, or she's still in shock, or she's not grieving properly, or she's in denial. You know, I've got all these, what is she doing sort of moments. And I'm like, I know exactly what I'm doing. And I'm really in charge of that. I'm choosing to do this. And she looked at me and said, what does grief mean to you, Marie? And I said, empowerment. And that was really surprising for me. To have that one word come up, empowerment. I was like, wow. And I remember looking at her and saying, I think I have to write a book about this. So that was the whole, I
mean, I barely know you, but it would seem that that is the right answer for you. You just seem like a hard charger, somebody that's not going to take loss. You know, you're no matter what the loss is, that you're going to move forward and help others. I mean, the amount of people you've helped since then is staggering.
Yeah,
man,
it is.
And what a wonderful way for him to live on too. I mean, forever in the book. So good for you.
I agree.
Yeah. So next step is you got to travel the world and sign books and all that good stuff. And you're still grieving. How did that go for you?
So the traveling the world part was twofold. Like the one part was that Rob and I had actually planned to take an entire year off and travel the world with the boys and homeschool them. They didn't know that at the time, obviously. And I also thought there's no need to tell them right now, because it's just, why rub it in when we can't do it anyway? And I just felt I needed to create a sort of version of that I could do with them. I knew there's no way, I did not feel ready to travel the world with two boys and homeschool them on my own. In particular, not going to South America. There are places I would have gone to with my husband, but not on my own with two young boys. So I literally decided, you know what? I need to get away from all these first milestones without Rob, you know, the first Christmas and New Year's and birthdays. And I'm like, I'm going to do this. I'm just going to travel the world with them 2 months. And so they don't miss too much of school, because they already missed quite a bit through the funeral and just, you know, keeping them home for a while after all that happened. And I went to the travel agent and I just looked at an itinerary that would work for us. And I remember the one thing that I had was 1 week that I knew had exact dates with my godfather in the Canary Islands. I always wanted to visit him there. He migrated to the Canary Islands when I migrated to Australia. So I had never been there. And I'm like, I need to see this. I need to be with him. He is just phenomenal in terms of holding space and just being there. It's like being with him is like a pure form of therapy and love and self-love. So I thought that's perfect. Wonderful. But he had that particular week because he's got guest houses. He's got to put this house free for you for that week. Wow. So I booked everything around it. And I'm like, we had this 1 week still spare before the Canary Islands. And I was standing there looking at this big world map in the travel agency. And I still remember thinking, what is between Australia and Canary Islands? There's a whole lot. But I just thought, you know, halfway roughly. And I looked around, I looked at little islands and I'm like, Maldives. We're going to the Maldives. Awesome. I've been there once when I was 25 and I always thought, I want to come back and stay in one of those overwater bungalows. I want that. Yeah. So I did that with the boys and it was the best start of our trip because it was just soft and wide and nurturing. Do you know what I mean? It was just exactly what we needed after all that turmoil. Mm-hmm. And, you know, the writing the book and everything just happened before we left. I literally published a book 2-3 weeks before we jumped on the plane. And then there was just relaxing. Just, you know, it was incredible.
Oh, I couldn't imagine how peaceful that would have been and the time you had with each other.
My heart so needed that, you know. It was just snorkeling and the ocean, and it was just incredible, really beautiful.
Wow. Yeah, wonderful. Good for you. Good for
Thank
you. So how long did you travel for then at that point?
So we had about 9 weeks, and we went to 7 different countries. So we went from the Maldives to the Canary Islands. Then we went, obviously you have to go through Spain to get there. Then we went to Vienna, Austria, where I was born. Spent Christmas with my mom. Then we went to Salzburg, you know, spent New Year's with my 2 closest friends and their families. And then we went to Paris because my older son wanted to eat escargot in Paris. So we did that. One of the most bonding and revolting experiences I've ever had. Honestly, it was funny, Ron. I have to tell you this because I never thought that I would ever in my life eat escargot. Like there's nothing more revolting for me than the thought of eating snails. You know, it's just really not my thing. Yeah. And then he pulled the dad card on me and he looked at me and said, do you want to try it? I said, no way in the world will I eat this. And he looked at me and said, Dad would have tried it with me. I had a Bart Simpson strangling him moment.
And it worked? You had to try it?
It worked. I had to try. And even my younger son, who's super fancy with food and would not ever try anything new, even he tried it. So it worked on him too. And it was very bonding. So we probably had a third of that escargot between the 3 of us, like a tiniest bit. And but I tried it and I'll never do it again.
Well, you did it and it was in Paris. There's no way. You know, there's no way. That's
and then we went through Germany to visit my goddaughter that I hadn't seen for like 20 years almost.
Oh my gosh.
And then we ended up through Sentosa Island, Singapore, Sentosa Island, to go to Universal Studios for my son's birthday. So
cool.
And then back to Australia. So it was a really, really nice trip around the world. And just something that we needed, you know, fun, easy, and we traveled really well together. It was beautiful.
Yeah, that's really good. And so
Yeah.
you come home, and I can't imagine how you get back into life after that.
Yeah, I couldn't either, to be honest.
That's
Yeah,
wow.
it was really interesting because that part of coming home, so the boys obviously went back to school. That's why we planned a trip in a way that they had the big summer holidays in Australia and like, I mean, summer in Australia, but holidays around the world.
Right.
And when they went back to school, I remember I had this really bizarre moment in my living room. I was sitting on the floor and it was this full on, wow, what now? You know? And I realized that up until that moment, and we're talking about 9 months after Robert passed at that stage,
Mhm.
every moment of my life was planned. I had a plan for everything, you know,
Sure.
doing the therapy, the writing the book, the traveling around the world, and obviously before the funeral and all of that, everything was planned.
Yeah.
Everything had a date. That's when I'm going to do this, and that's when I'm going to do that. And then all of a sudden I came back and I just sat there and it hit me. It literally, I call it the hole and the hill experience because to me, and I use that in my programs these days actually, and that's the name I gave it because to me it felt like there was this massive hole opening up next to me that I would probably describe as a lurking depression waiting for me to fall in there. And then
Yeah.
there was this little hill of new happy experiences that I had created since Rob passed. But I felt I had no strength left to climb up there to get a better view of where I'm actually standing. You know,
Sure.
I felt I was sitting in the middle. And what I did without realizing is I went into observation. I literally just observed. And that's probably what people describe as meditation. In
Sure.
meditation, you just observe. You don't stop your thoughts, you just observe. And that's what's been happening. And I realized I was in that state for about 7 to 10 days. Really,
Wow.
I felt like everything was just so as if I wasn't really quite with it. Do you know what I mean? It was
Sure.
like in a meditative state, just observing. And I could feel that hole next to me the entire time. And I'm like, I don't want to go down that road.
Right.
I don't want to fall into that hole because what happens if I can't get back out?
You're the only
I
one
just can't
left.
do this. You
Yeah.
know, I'm their only parent left. So after about 10 days, I had a catch up with a new mentor and I had contacted him while I was traveling when I was in Vienna. And I had this epiphany in Vienna that this is so much more than just a book. Loving Life After Loss needs to be taken way further. So I talked to him about it, and he's a specialist in creating tribes, creating movements.
Mhm.
And I said, that's what I want to do. So I came back, I caught up with him, and a week later, I was sat in this first workshop with him and 20 other people and recorded my first welcome video for my group. So I started a group almost 3 years ago now. So I opened it on the 19th of March 19. And yeah, I called that the same thing like the book because I thought it's such a perfect title, Loving Love After Loss. And I turned it into a group. And within the first 1 or 2 weeks, I had hundreds of people in there. And then it climbed
Really?
up to, and now we've got like 3,500 people in there.
Oh my
And
gosh.
it's been phenomenal. To me, that journey I still describe, it felt like jumping off a cliff and
Yeah.
growing my wings on the way down. And
I love it.
yeah, yeah,
That's a great
that's
analogy.
yeah,
That's huge. So, and I think that's what depression it really you described that so well. That's
mm,
exactly. Uh, so I it, COVID has eventually taken my mainstay of income
mhm,
this year. It finally caught up, and things just changed drastically. Where
yeah,
a drastic change like that, a loss, anything like that,
yeah,
you kind of are circling the depression mode.
mm,
But if people think that I'm not doing anything, but I tend to just, like you say, observe
yeah,
until something comes along, something happens. You figure it out if you
mm,
just don't do anything and
yeah.
just observe. I think that's a great thing to do.
And
Absolutely.
it's such a luxury. Not many people really
Yeah.
allow themselves to do that. They feel the need. I have to do something. I have to. I
Sure.
have to. I have to. And that's the pressure from society, really.
Yeah.
But if you can allow yourself to just be and
Yeah.
observe, it's incredible. Yeah.
Hmm. Absolutely. Man, that's amazing. So you have this huge group now, And so I presume you speak to them weekly or monthly or?
Almost daily, actually. So
Really?
I I have been live in a group pretty much daily for a long, long time, and then only the last couple of months actually, I turned that down a little bit only because I had so many other things going on. You know, as you said, I've published my second book, Happy Healing, on the
Mhm.
2nd of the 2nd. So I made this massive use of that portal that everybody talked about. You know, the 2nd of the 2nd till the 22nd of the 2nd. And in those 3 weeks, I published my second book, first on ebook, then it came out as paperback as well. Between those two dates, 2nd and 22nd, I also applied for my first TEDx talk, got accepted
Oh,
on my
wow.
husband's birthday. I got that email
Oh
that I
my
got
gosh.
accepted on the exact hour he was born. That email came through. I just couldn't believe it. I was like, thanks, babe. I know that was you.
That's awesome.
And yeah, full on. And then because I had really good connections to get in there last minute, I had 3 days to write the speech, rehearse it, and record it
Oh
and
my
send it
gosh.
over, because it was all done virtually. With COVID, there was still not, you know, really actual stage presence. So there was the virtual studio. I had to find a film studio that sponsored me. I got that within an hour. Again, I was like, thanks, babe. It was
Wow.
like really, it was an incredible journey to do that. And it was such an adrenaline rush. So my TEDx talk came out literally on the 22nd of the 2nd.
That
It
is
was
amazing.
published, and yeah, I was really, really gobsmacked. It just felt so surreal to have actually done that, because last year I said, yeah, I'll do a TEDx talk in February, and I was like, okay, I actually put a date to it. I said February, you know, and it happened in February. I just couldn't believe it. And yeah, so the TEDx talk was redefining our image of a widow. You can look that up. It's really my little masterpiece. I love that message, and straight from my heart, and I think that's what we all need to do.
Say it one more time so my audience can hear it.
Yeah, sure. It's redefining our image of a widow.
Perfect. And we can just
Yeah.
Google that and it'll come up.
Yep. It will
Oh,
come up.
wow. All right. And so now you've got the other book out there. Is this just a carry forward of your other book?
Yeah.
Okay.
And a little bit more. So the Happy Healing I wrote because I wanted to continue the story and tell people what happened after I wrote the first book, you know, how it had taken the world by storm. And I knew I had to create something with that. I really wanted to give people a lot more. And the most beautiful thing is when you heal, when you give back, it comes back to you tenfold, and then you've got even more to give. And it becomes this upward spiral of sharing hope and love and happiness and healing. And that's exactly what I wanted to do. I knew that was my purpose. That's the purpose of it all happening. And when Rob passed, I knew there had to be a huge purpose. Something like that doesn't just happen for nothing. And I found that purpose. I found that purpose in wanting to heal the world from grief, wanting to break down that stigma around grief, how people are supposed to do it, and give them a different way, you know, share hope with them. And so Happy Healing really explained what happened after Loving Life After Loss was published, and how it turned into this movement, and how the boys and I healed, and also really hands-on healing tools for people to use. I wanted that to be almost like a bit of a handbook as well, something that they can refer back to, tools that they can actually use immediately while they're reading the book. And that's what I wanted, something that really helps people to move forward and get out of this stuckness around grief that a lot of people find themselves in and don't know how to get out.
You know, and you're absolutely right. My wife just lost her father last year. I lost mine when I was 24, which
Yeah.
was fairly young, and
Yeah.
but I had kids and things, so it was a little different. But she she did her grief was much different than mine, and
Yeah.
there isn't a particular way to grieve, but
Yeah.
for her, she's still grieving, and it's there's things we can't do. I can't bring up his name hardly without worrying
Yeah.
about her losing it. So,
Oh,
I
you need to
know.
read
So
my book.
I know, and that's what's going to happen. We're going to do that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, absolutely. I think that
oh,
would be a perfect present for her. Like it's there's nothing more beautiful than saying your loved ones' names, because I don't ever want anybody to feel they can't say Rob's name around me. I actually love when people tell me stories about him. And one of Rob's very close friends, Darren, he has a couple of months after Rob passed, or a couple of weeks, I can't remember the exact time, he had written a letter to my boys telling them about their dad and the memories he had of them, of him. And I just love that. It was one of the most beautiful gifts I have ever received after Rob's passing, that somebody took the time to sit down and write a letter to my boys so they've got something they can keep, because they were so young, you know, and they still are. They're 12 and 14 now. So that's precious. It's precious to say somebody's name and to remember them, because I can promise you that's what they want, you know, and your father-in-law would want nothing more than his name being said and memories shared about him. You know, I'm absolutely convinced about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the rest of the family, that's sort of everything now is he comes up in our, you know, he comes up. But you know, that's the legacy of the person that's passed away. That's all we have, really. Yeah. Well, this is great. So let's why don't we give everybody, how do we get a hold of you? Can anybody be a part of your group, by the way?
Absolutely. So as you can imagine, I'm very protective of my group. So there are people that I have refused to get in, but that's literally, let me put it that way. Everybody is welcome in a group. I want to make this very, very clear, because people often ask me, oh, is that just for women? Because the majority of my group is female. But I just put it down to, it's just because of who I am. So naturally, I draw more widows into the group, but I've also got a lot of moms that have lost their children, or people that have lost their parents, or more and more men now as well. I think we're up to 2 or 3% of male in the group. It started off with 0.5 or something.
Wow.
So I never said no, that men couldn't join, but I think it's just because of who you are, you naturally attract more people like you, as in the same avatar, I should say. But yeah, so the best way to reach anything and everything I do is my website, which is my first name, last name.com. So it's mariealessi.com. And from there, you have all the links. You find my first book, my second book, my TEDx talk, my group, my programs, my free healing journey that you can do in my group. So everybody's welcome to join. I'm just overprotective of people when they come in and want to heal or do readings in my group or share their business. That's an absolute no-no for me. So I really keep that space for love and support. And when other people think they can just come in and do it their way, I'm very protective, because those people come to me because they like my way. So I screen those people who want to share what they do. I'm more than happy to share other healing modalities, everything, but they come to me for an interview. So I can actually ask them these questions, and then they can share whatever they want. And I'm totally open to that. I'm like, the more the merrier. The world needs healing. It's not just me. There's hundreds and thousands of people out there, but I want to make sure that they're the right people and they've got their mindset set on healing and not on grief. Unfortunately, a lot of people who are in the grief support still focus on the grieving rather than the healing. And I always say, if you focus on the healing, the grieving part happens along the way. It happens automatically. It's natural. But when we focus on it, we get stuck there. When we focus on the healing, that's where we are going. And that's the tiny but huge difference, if that makes sense. And I want to make sure that the people that come in are aligned with that.
Absolutely. Boy, that's no different than the swirling depression circle there, you know? That makes total sense. I need to read your book too, and I apologize. we hooked up so quickly. I did not.
That's absolutely fine. Seriously, it all happens in divine timing. Whenever, you know, that's fine.
Yeah. Well, I sure appreciate it. Appreciate you coming on. We have one more question. I warned you with very little time, so hopefully you have something in mind. We're going to play Brewster's Billions. I'm going to give you $1 billion of play money. You have to spend it all in a month. No assets, no extra cash. What do you do with it?
Woohoo! I love that question. Yes, you did give me a pre-warning, but I literally had no time to think about it because I was focusing on my story during the interview, obviously.
Yes, ma'am.
But the first question I asked, so I can't buy a house. He said, you can buy a house for your kids. I'm like, okay, so I would definitely make sure that my kids are set up, because they're my number one priority, and buy them a house each, a mansion each. I can hear my son going, "A mansion, mom, a mansion." I'm like, "Okay, a mansion each." But you know what? In all honesty, if I had $1 billion to spend in 1 month, I would love to create facilities where people can come and heal, like really worldwide, train people in those modalities that I do, where the focus stays on the healing, where people come and there's help, we can hold space for them and we can offer them love and really an open ear. A lot of people need to learn how to really listen to people and not just come with their healing approach or with their grieving approach, whatever that is. So yeah, creating facilities around the world, I think that's the number one thing how I would love to spend my $1 billion, just training people and open up facilities where people can come. Those who really lost everything. I was very fortunate. We had our life insurance. I was looked after financially. I was very, very fortunate. And I'm also well aware that not every widow out there, or not everybody who's experienced a tragedy like that, is looked after financially. So there are a lot of people who literally lose everything, not just their husband or child or whoever that person is that has died, but everything, their house, their life, and often they're just not in the right state of mind or heart to be able to work. So I just would love to have, I'm having goosebumps all over. This is beautiful. I would just love to have spaces for them where they can heal, where they can just be and not be pushed and pressured because they have to earn money to survive. So
I think you should have several locations though, and one of them needs to be in Maldives.
Yes, wow, I'd love that. Fly people to the Maldives so they can heal there. That would be the perfect healing spot.
Oh
absolutely.
my gosh. Yeah, absolutely. Make sure you have one in the United States area, maybe Mexico, so that you're a little closer than Australia.
That sounds terrific. Yes.
It's been such a pleasure.
Maybe Costa Rica.
Yeah, there you go. Oh, I love Costa Rica.
Yeah.
It's been such a pleasure having you on. It was a pleasure meeting you. I know
Thank you so much, Ron.
Yeah, thank you. And